We are live, and as you can see, I took a little bit of a fall yesterday. Yeah, I was just hanging out with my cat, and he decided to sit down, actually lie down, right behind my foot. And I didn't see him there, didn't hear him, so I went to turn around, and I immediately stepped on his paw, and he yelped, and I immediately tried to take my foot off to make sure, you know, I didn't squish his paw or anything like that. And in so doing, I lost my balance and I took a tumble. So, yeah. It's actually not all that bad. I just got a couple bruises and I'm feeling just totally fine today, but that's why I didn't do stream yesterday. Because, mostly it just kind of sapped me of all of my energy. But, yeah, let's ditch this crutch. I'm actually feeling a lot better. So we've got a lot to talk about today. We have, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. I saw that. I saw Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. And of course, we're going to continue talking about Secret Invasion and Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But first up, we have some, you know, new strike news. Yeah, Hollywood's on strike. Like, all of it now, basically. Because, without the actors, you can't do it. The cat attempted an assassination attempt. Well, you know, there's a reason he's not here right now. No, he's fine. But yeah, no. So Hollywood's now on full strike. Without actors, you can't film anything. Now, I don't know, maybe I know that, like, animation doesn't fall under the WGA, so Hollywood might be doing, like, a pivot to more animated work, but even then, like, you can't get any SAG actors to voice that stuff, right? So, good luck with that. You can't do your usual thing of stuffing in a bunch of celebrity voice talents to your Illumination picture. Now, the Hollywood execs are being complete bastards about this. Like, there was leaked... well, I don't know if it was leaked or if one of the a studio exec talked to a reporter off the record or something like that. But basically, Hollywood's plan is to let the strike keep going until writers can no longer afford to pay their bills and start losing their homes and going hungry. And this was, you know, said before the actors joined in on the strike. Now that to me sounds like the kind of thing that I don't know, that Robespierre might have some things to say about, if you take my hint. But obviously, full solidarity with everyone in the entertainment industry. Obviously, I can't do these review streams without the hard work and talent of those writers and actors. So, yeah. Hey, Sai, welcome in. But anyway, this should be interesting to see how this impacts things going forward. I don't think this strike is going to end anytime soon, because it definitely looks like the studios are really committed to being the biggest pieces of shit possible. And, you know, when you consider these studio execs are making millions and millions and, like, I think it's like a handful, the top 5 paid execs in Hollywood, they could basically take a pay cut of like half, and that would pay for all of the writers' demands. Now, as for the actors, I know one of the big things that they're concerned about is, the studios want to do a thing where they pay a background actor for one day of work to just scan their image and then use that image to digitally populate backgrounds forever. Which means if you want to be a background actor, you can get one day of work for your entire life. Fuck that. Yeah. I don't know. All solidarity with the actors and the writers. We'll see how it goes. I do know, actually, at least with one of the movies that we're talking about, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, that I think they were filming the second half and took a brief pause to promote this first half, and then the actor strike happened. So, yeah, the sequel's probably going to be delayed by quite a bit. We'll see how this goes. Anyway, we don't have a lot of news on the strike because it just happened, so let us get into the movies. So, I saw Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning this week. And if you've ever seen a Mission Impossible movie, you basically know what you are there for. You're there for Tom Cruise to do a big stunt by himself, have some fun action sequences. He's gonna run a lot. And, you know, you're pretty much gonna have a fun, popcorny, forgettable experience. This is pretty much in that regard, but, like, there's a lot of fun action set pieces here. And I do want to talk about some of the stuff that we've got going on in this movie. So, they add a new character to, like, the roster. For the last couple movies, they've been kind of, like, sticking with these characters, you know, Tom Cruise's character, Rebecca Ferguson's character, Simon Pegg, and Ving Rhames. Ving Rhames has been in all the Mission Impossible movies. Jeremy Renner's not back for this one. I suspect he's just not coming back because of Marvel commitments. Also, you know, he took a pretty severe injury this year with a snowplow, but I imagine that happened after this movie was filmed anyway. I think it's just a thing where, you know, he's not coming back. But honestly, like, these movies are kind of set up in a way where, like, you don't really remember what happened in the previous one. And that actually kind of poses a problem here because Ilsa's character, or Rebecca Ferguson's character, Ilsa Faust, there's a lot in this movie where they basically just rely entirely on you remembering her character from the previous movies. Like, there's a lot of emotional pieces with her that don't land at all if the last time you saw the previous movie was when it was in theaters and you haven't thought about it since. And that's an issue that I noticed with, like, the James Bond movies, the Daniel Craig ones with Spectre, when Blofeld is revealing that he's been the mastermind behind all of James Bond's enemies up to that point, and, like, they show, like, flashbacks, or not even flashbacks, they just show, like, pictures of faces of characters from the previous movies, and I'm just like, was I supposed to even remember the villains in the previous movies? Because, like, these movies aren't that deep. They're just action movies, right? Like, don't expect me to remember Mads Mikkelsen from a movie that came out 15 years ago, you know? And, yeah, so Ilsa's character, it's really just built up around, remember her from the previous movies? No? Oh, well, that's on you then. Haley Atwell joins the cast. She's the newest member of the Impossible Mission Force team. She's a pickpocket that actually is, like, you know, kind of just a rogue agent who's actually operating opposed to Tom Cruise at first, but, you know, then she ends up joining them because you know how that stuff goes. It's like the Fast and the Furious movies, you know? You introduce a new villain, but then by the next movie, they're working with the heroes. And that's kind of what she is. But it also feels like they brought Haley Atwell in kind of to replace Ilsa Faust, or Rebecca Ferguson's character. Because, I don't know, I feel like she didn't have a lot to do in this movie, but it was very much like Haley Atwell's character is very much the second main character of the movie. She's a lot of fun. She's, you know, got a very, like, specific skill set of thieving, but she's not, like, a well-rounded skill set, so there's a lot of things where she's completely in over her head. There's actually a great set piece where they are doing a car chase in Rome in a Fiat 500 where Tom Cruise and Haley Atwell are handcuffed to each other, but handcuffed in such a way that they have to cross arms if Tom Cruise needs to drive. And so, and also, like, they're trying to figure out how to drive this dinky little car while they're being pursued by the police, and like some rogue elements within like an armored tank, plus US federal agents are after him because, you know, he's gone rogue again, because that's how it always happens. But there's a lot of fun action scenes in this movie, and the car chase in Rome with a Fiat 500, that's definitely one of the funnier ones. One of the first action set pieces in this movie is a big like firefight set in the desert during a sandstorm. And I saw this movie in Dolby, and like the sound mix during the sandstorm, it like basically shakes your bones. It was really, really loud. But like in a good way, like I was just like, ooh, I feel the sandstorm. And so that was cool. Now you can see down here at the bottom of the poster, Tom Cruise is running off of a derailing train, and that's the last action set piece of the movie. And this one actually is overlong. Like there's a whole sequence where a bridge is taken out and train car after train car is falling off and like getting decoupled and crashing, and like characters are like having to climb up the dangling cars and making it out just in time. But like they go through like 3 different cars that they have to climb up before they detach and fall down into the river. And I thought they could probably have done one fewer car than they did. It just it seemed a little excessive there. Ving Rhames, it kind of feels like he's only here because he's been in every movie to this point. They really don't know what to do with his character. Like Simon Pegg's character, he is the guy in the chair, right? He's, you know, the nerdy guy who does all the tech stuff. But Ving Rhames is also kind of like a nerdy guy who does all the tech stuff. So you've got 2 guys in a chair in this movie. And I suspect part of it is just that Ving Rhames has been in there since the beginning, and, you know, Ving Rhames is a cool dude, so they bring him back, but they just don't know what to do with him. I also think Ving Rhames probably just really isn't in the best of shape to be doing any action. I mean, the guy's in his mid-50s, and he's, you know, he's overweight, and I don't think he wants to do a whole lot of actual action, so he doesn't really have any action. I mean, at least Simon Pegg gets to do some running around in this movie. Then Pom Klementieff, she's in this movie as, you know, one of the muscle for the villain. She's kind of fun. You know, it's, again, these movies are very popcorny. There's not a lot of depth to them. She really doesn't have much dialogue at all. She just looks intimidating and is kind of sadistic with her violence, but she's a fun character. And then Gabriel here, this guy's named Gabriel. He's the villain of the movie, but like he's been intentionally set up as kind of like a mysterious figure from Ethan's past. And because this is part 1 of 2, they really don't go into it. Like we see some flashbacks of like a woman who is murdered by Gabriel, and Ethan took the blame for it. And that's actually one thing that they set up in this movie, is that every IMF agent was basically a career criminal who was given a choice to either go to prison or work for the IMF. And so I think it's implied that the murder of this woman that Ethan took the blame for, even though it was Gabriel, that's why he was brought into the IMF. But the actual real main villain in the movie is not Gabriel, but it's a rogue AI that the U.S. government had developed. And, you know, they developed an AI, it went rogue, and now it's like kind of doing its own thing and like manipulating things, and it has its own goals in mind, and it can basically, it kind of works like a technological oracle. Like it's able to analyze people's behaviors to predict what actions they're gonna take. And so it has picked Gabriel as like its kind of avatar. Like, you know, Gabriel has some motivations of his own, but it's very clear that he is primarily just doing the bidding of the AI, and the AI likewise is doing a lot of things. Like he gets erased in real time from any security footage, so he kind of moves around like a ghost. But there's not really a lot to this guy. I do like the AI villain concept, and it's interesting to see how our conception of AI as the villain has changed from like Terminator era. Because like in Terminator, when you had a rogue AI, all it did was, you know, launch nukes to destroy all of humanity. Whereas now that we understand how algorithmic manipulation impacts, you know, the ways that society interacts with each other and functions, it makes a lot more sense that you would have an AI that actually seeks more to just do subtle pushes to, you know, get manipulate people into doing what it wants. But overall, I think it's a pretty fun movie. I have no idea when we're gonna get the sequel to it. It ends not really on a cliffhanger. I mean, they did have, literally, they were hanging from a train that was over a cliff, but I mean, it's not a cliffhanger in that something's really unresolved. It's just they've got a next step after this that really could go anywhere. But like a big part of this is like trying to get two halves of a key that they think is going to unlock something that will help them defeat the AI, but they don't know what it unlocks or where the thing it unlocks is. And so like a big part of that is like they have one half of the key and they find a buyer who's got like the other half of the key because they want to track them, assuming that they know what the key unlocks. All they really know is the key has something to do with the AI, and they're still not really clear on what the key does, but it's a MacGuffin. It's just two halves of a key that, when put together, you get, I don't know, it's like a kill switch or something for the AI. We'll find out. Maybe. If the writer's strike ever ends. Or if the actor's strike ever ends, because I think the second movie's already written because they were filming it, but nobody's acting right now. Anyway, I think it's a really, really enjoyable movie. I think y'all should give it a watch. And then the next movie I saw this week was Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. Now, I don't know if anybody knows about this because I really hadn't heard anything about it before seeing it. I was actually originally going to see Elemental this week. But then a friend of mine, Dizzy, they wanted to go see this movie. Hey, Dizzy, there you are in chat. And so, yeah, I changed plans, went ahead and saw this one. Now, if you have seen Turning Red, then you've probably seen like most of the important parts of this movie, because this movie, like, I got the feeling that when they were producing it, they got wind of what Pixar was doing with Turning Red and just kind of copied that, because it's about a teenage girl who basically, you know, as a metaphor for puberty, discovers that she can turn into a big monster. And, you know, and a lot of it is like her mom was like hiding the truth from her about it. And so like all of those kind of beats, you know, the controlling families and lies and stuff like that, ultimately ending in everyone becoming a big giant monster, you know, to help save the day. That's how it played out in Turning Red, and that's pretty much how it plays out here. But unlike Turning Red, you can really feel the lack of a budget in this movie. This movie has a budget of like $73 million, and it looks really sparse. So here you can see Ruby in her Kraken form. Now, Ruby is always a Kraken. Actually, let's see. Nope, that's the mermaid. Here she is when she's just like in her teenage form. So her family, they're Krakens, but they moved from the ocean because her mom didn't want her to become the giant Kraken protector of the ocean. She wanted to protect her. And so they just tell everyone that they're Canadian, and that's why they've got blue skin. But here you can see her in Kraken form. I quite like her design, but one reason I pulled up this image is just to kind of give you an idea of what all of the ocean shots look like, because they're all pretty much undetailed and flat like this. There's just a real lack of any kind of sensation of depth to the ocean shots. The most you might get is like a kelp forest, or like when she goes to the Kraken City, you know, at least there's, you know, stuff there. But for a lot of this movie, it's like anytime she's in the ocean, anytime there's an underwater shot, it just feels like, oh well, yeah, they did about what they could with the budget on this one. And the world building itself, likewise, is pretty thin. Like, they established that the Krakens are the protectors of the ocean, and like she's part of a royal lineage. Like her grandma is the queen of the Krakens, and so her mom is, you know, heir to the throne, and then she's heir after that. But you know, her mom just wants to go off and be a realtor in an oceanside town. And I was actually wondering, I'm like, well, if you wanted to raise Ruby away from the water so that she wouldn't turn into a giant Kraken when she goes in the water, why would you still live in an oceanside town? But they mentioned, oh, we still needed the, you know, the moisture in the air, because I guess, you know, they are undersea invertebrates, so they probably would dry out pretty quickly in Arizona. But these are her friends and her love interest in the movie, and like you can probably just kind of get the vibe of who these people are from looking at them, and that's about really all of the development that they get. They're very paper thin, and like it's one of those things where, you know, one of those coming of age stories where like a teenager learns something new and finds some like new interest and like gets a new friend and starts like neglecting their old friends. And I would have liked a little bit more runtime in the movie to have more scenes of like explicitly doing that, and like at least one more scene of like her friends confronting her for blowing them off. But oftentimes it's just like played off as she's off in the ocean doing training to be the giant Kraken, and her friends might be sending her texts that she's ignoring. And then this guy is her love interest, and he's got literally no personality other than he's the love interest guy, right? Very paper thin characterization. They really wanted to focus more on Ruby doing her krakening thing. And this girl, whose name I can't remember. I really can't remember any character's name other than Ruby, but she's a mermaid who shows up posing as the new girl, and she wants to be Ruby's bestie once she finds out Ruby is a Kraken. But we find out that actually mermaids and Kraken are mortal enemies, and she's actually the mermaid queen who is trying to manipulate Ruby into getting a big trident she says is like, oh, it was the trident that was designed to kill Krakens, but if you can dig it out, we could use it as like a symbol of unity and unite the peoples, when really she just wants Ruby to get her the trident so she can become a giant kaiju and kill the Kraken. But you know, she's pretty standard, like, nice girl, mean girl trope. But one thing that bugs me about her is that, like, I like the concept of the pretty girl being the villain and the monsters, you know, the more grotesque ones being the good guys. But they end up not going that route. Like, this is the mermaid. Once she gets the trident, she turns giant and monstrous herself. And I don't know, I feel like that kind of undermined it. Because, you know, for a movie that was trying to turn it on its head and say, oh no, the mermaids are the bad guys, the Kraken are actually the good guys here. I feel like there was probably a message you could have had in there of, you know, just because they're pretty doesn't mean they're good. But then once I mean, it's a very cool design, don't get me wrong, I like it, but they still make her like a big monster that Ruby has to fight at the end. And even if she was still giant, but like just was a giant version of a mermaid, you know, just like, you know, when you're watching Power Rangers and the guy shoots the ray at the bad guy to make him giant, so they all have to get in their Zords and fight him. It doesn't need to be more monstrous and designed to do that. She could just be a giant mermaid. And I think I would have preferred that. And I just realized I haven't been recording this entire time, so these segments aren't gonna look as good on YouTube. I'm gonna have to download the VOD to do it. So let me start recording now, so at least I can get the other ones properly edited. Yeah, all the fun of being a streamer. Let's see, what else do I have about this movie? No, okay, yeah, that's about all I've got to say about this movie. It's fine, it's forgettable. I don't know, if you've got, once it comes out on streaming, your kid wants to watch it, it's probably a fine movie for them. Yeah, it's definitely not one of DreamWorks' better movies. And it really shows its low budget in this one. So, yeah. As Dizzy says, there's a lot of YouTube jokes. The dad does ASMR. Yes, there is quite a lot of humor involved with like live streaming and YouTube creation and stuff like that. Like, there's a character who is like your stereotypical like old you know, sea dog. He's like, oh, I've been hunting the Kraken for like 30 years, but he's got like a live stream going on where he's talking about it. And at the end, when he actually has to help the Kraken to fight the mermaid, he like does an apology video. And I was with Dizzy and I'm just like, oh, he should pull out a ukulele right now. Freddy says, so it's just for kids? Pretty much, yeah, it's a kids movie. There's no like major deeper themes to it. Nothing like Pixar tries the pretense of. Pixar doesn't always get that, you know, obviously, but this didn't really try for any like deeper messages. And also, once like Ruby saves the town from the mermaid and like just shrinks back down for like prom, everyone immediately accepts her, and like all of her friends, you know, immediately forgive her for blowing them off. Yeah, it's all of the plot points in this movie are pretty paper thin and resolved pretty quickly. It felt like it needed a bit more running time to fully develop all of that plot, but you know, it's okay. I'm probably not gonna watch it again, but it was fine. So now we've got Secret Invasion. We are now in the fourth episode of Secret Invasion. And we're now finding out more people are Skrulls. Most notably, Rhodey's a Skrull. Yeah, I mean, based on him being a jerk to Fury and firing him earlier, it seemed fairly obvious. But yeah, in this one, he's a Skrull. You know, he's positioned, with a spot in the White House, very close to the president. So it makes sense that the Skrulls would want somebody there. But the Skrull who's playing Rhodey is kind of an idiot. Because, like, you know, Fury figures it out pretty quickly in this episode. And then, like, Rhodey's attached to the president in like, a motorcade, but he doesn't have his War Machine armor. And, like, there's, you know, an action set piece around that motorcade where it makes zero sense that he wouldn't be in his War Machine armor. Except that, like, they didn't want to pay for that CG, I guess. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me. Yeah. And actually, I think interestingly, the Skrull that is posing as Rhodey is a woman. I doubt anything more is gonna come of that, other than we like see her in the shower before she like steps out and turns into Rhodey. But since last week they foiled a nuclear attack that Gravik and his crew were planning. This week they decide to make it look like the Russians are attacking the president. So that's, you know, that could definitely start a world war. Checking my notes, sorry. But actually quite a lot of this episode is taken up. Where is my note? This one? It's this one. Quite a lot of this episode is taken up with us learning about Fury's wife. She's called Priscilla, at least that's her human name. I don't remember what her Skrull name is or if they said it, but you know, she's a Skrull. And she and Fury have been married for about 10, 20 years. But she's also working for Gravik. And Gravik, actually, Rhodey tells her to kill Fury, or they'll kill her. And, you know, obviously she and Fury have a rocky relationship with him, you know, leaving her right after the blip to go to space and all that stuff. But a lot of the episode is kind of devoted to her relationship issues, but they do end up working it out and they don't kill each other. Obviously, I didn't think the show was going to go that route. But if they're not going to do more with her, this kind of feels like a filler plot. I guess something to build out Nick Fury's character a bit more, but I don't really see the relevance to her character to the plot itself. It just feels like something to pad out time. Especially because, like, I didn't think at any point she was actually going to betray him. They're not going to introduce a wife character and then he has to kill her, right? That's... a braver director might do something like that, but that's not the Marvel way. They're not going to do that. As for Talos is an absolute moron. But unfortunately, so are the writers. So I think, like, he's got this idealistic vision of how the Skrulls are going to convince the humans to let them stay on the planet. He's like, no, we just have to show them that we're good people. We have to show them who we are and you know, rely on their kindness. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really how getting civil rights has ever really worked. It usually does take direct action. Maybe not starting a nuclear war, but, you know, Marvel's had a problem with this where the villain has good ideas, but they go too far. So we really should probably just maintain the neoliberal status quo and, you know, do a speech to the president about how he has to do better with, you know, claps in between. And he pitches this whole idea to his daughter Gaia that you know, that he just is going to convince the US presidents to give them amnesty by, like, you know, showing them that they're good people. And she's just like, yeah, you're an idiot, that's not gonna work. And that's what I was yelling when he was saying it. I'm like, this is the most Libby thing ever, it's not gonna work. But then again, it's Marvel, so I think ultimately he will be proven right. I think that it'll take some, like, there'll be some noble sacrifice that will convince the president, oh, you know what, the Skrulls can be good people too, so sure, million Skrulls, come on into the US, be shapeshifters. No problems can arise from that. But yeah, where am I? Oh yeah, Gaia. So I mentioned last week that I didn't think we were gonna see much more of Gaia, and that's because they did a fake out where she, like, gets shot by Gravik once he finds out she's the mole. But then at the beginning of this episode, we find out that she, like, had put herself in the contraption that turns them into Super Skrulls, so she was able to heal from the bullet wounds. But so I expect she's probably gonna have some big action set piece in like 6th episode where she and Gravik have it out. But Gravik's got some powers. Where is he? Yeah. I think those are Groot tentacles. Like, I'm pretty sure that's what they were. I think there was a screen on the base like a couple episodes ago where Gaia was investigating what all they were putting into the Super Skrull stuff, and one of the things was Groot's DNA. So apparently Gravik's got Groot arms now when he wants to. This actually kind of makes me think of a plot from the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where there was an organization called Centipede that was basically creating super soldiers by mixing together a bunch of different things like extremists and other things that had appeared previously in other MCU movies. And they're like, oh yeah, let's put it all together and, like, put it in a device that attaches to your spine or something like that. I don't remember if it was their spine or their wrist. Anyway, but it's just one of those things where it's, here's power sets that we've already established can be given to other people in the movies. We'll just have the villain take them all and mix them into a slurry. And so hopefully there's something more unique with the Super Skrull power set than that. But ultimately, unfortunately, I think he's just going to do some generic stealing. Yeah. But like I said, the big action set piece is Gravik stages a Russian attack on the president's convoy. And Rhodey, being a Skrull, is in that convoy, and at no point suits up, and I'm just like, that of course people are gonna know you're a Skrull. The president's being attacked and you're not war machining up. So, I don't know. I'm really not enjoying this show. That's about all I've got to say about this week. I'm just hoping for some good action. I know at the end of the show we're just gonna have somebody give a speech about how you've got to do better, and the United States will just happily accept 1 million shapeshifters as refugees because somebody said a speech. And even though, you know, ultimately Gravik is right in that, like, they're never just gonna give them a home, they have to take it. Like, that's how it would actually play out. But Marvel always has to have a villain who has good intentions, but, you know, goes too far, and so we've got to do the status quo thing. I don't know. Dizzy says, I mean, that is what a Super Skrull is. It's the all your powers combined trope, but usually in the comics it's the Fantastic Four's powers. Yeah, I know that when they were making Captain Marvel, I don't think they had purchased Fox yet. So there was a limit to what they could use the scrolls for. Like, they could use the scrolls, but they could not have the super scrolls yet. But they bought Fox since, so they now own the film rights to Fantastic Four are now back in Marvel's control. So there they go. I've got it. But yeah, Marvel's Libby, and this show really just feels like next week on the MCU. It's just kind of a filler series. I'm not enjoying it. So, tell you what I am enjoying, though, is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. We are in the 5th episode. It is called Charades. And last season, we had an episode called Spock Amok, where he and his fiancée try to do like it's like an advanced mind meld called a merging. I don't remember the exact term for it, but it was like they merged their katras. But it ended up doing a Freaky Friday body swap episode. And this episode kind of continues in that vein of having a humorous Spock episode revolving around his engagements to his fiancée. But in this episode, he falls in. He and Chapel are in a shuttlecraft, and they're like examining a rift created by some like extra dimensional beings. They fall into it, and then they just like appear back in the shuttle by the Enterprise with a note left saying, "Oh yeah, these things fell into our transport tube and were injured. We put them back together. There was an irregularity with one of them, so we fixed the irregularity. And the irregularity is that they were looking at the DNA of both Spock and Chapel, and, well, Chapel's fully human, but Spock is half human and half Vulcan, so they figured that that must have been a mistake, so they put him back fully human." And, there's some issues that I've got with how they play that off, because as you would expect, if you're telling a story where suddenly Spock is fully human, yes, you would expect, okay, he's going to be more emotional now, and that's how they do it. But I don't think that makes sense. Like, I think it's a funny episode, but I don't think that makes sense, because the implication being is that, oh, well, he's not Vulcan, so he's not, you know, the stoic, logical, cold, emotionless person anymore. But Vulcans aren't emotionless. Actually, Vulcans have very strong emotions. They're so strong that they're dangerous, and they deliberately suppress them. So, for him to lose those Vulcan emotions and just have the normal human ones to deal with, it doesn't quite make sense that he would, like, because, like, he doesn't lose his memory. He's still, you know, he's still Spock. He's just, you know, dealing with, like, going through a kind of a puberty, is what they compare it to. But his conditioning to suppress his emotions should still be there. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense that they would do it that way. But, you know, there's another thing that they bring up in the episode, and it's actually a callback to something that was established in Star Trek Enterprise, is that Vulcans have a much stronger sense of smell than humans, and also Vulcans think that humans stink. So most Vulcans that are serving with humans take a nasal suppressants to, you know, so that they aren't as impacted by the smell of humans. But that doesn't make sense for Spock, because one, Spock's half human, so I think his, you know, his sense of smell would probably be a little lessened, just because, you know, he's not full Vulcan. But also, he was raised by a human, so he would have been used to that smell anyway, and he would probably have some of that smell himself. This is kind of an issue that I've got in general with how they treat Spock as functionally full Vulcan for the show. Even though he's half human, and there are elements that deal with, like, the cultural problems with being a mixed race kid. Biologically, he's almost never treated differently from other full Vulcans. There's never a moment where it's like, oh, well, a full Vulcan would have this physiological reaction, but you're also human, so you have it differently. Pretty much, his Vulcan physiology completely supersedes his human physiology, and like I kind of understand why that is, because he was the first Vulcan in the franchise, so all other Vulcans were built with him as the template, even though he's only half Vulcan. I just there's issues that I've got that's not necessarily something that this episode started. It's just like an ongoing thing with how Spock is treated as a Vulcan compared to other Vulcans. That I don't think the writers have really thought out, or if they have thought out, they've decided they don't want to deal with it. But like I said, this is a very nitpicky critique. And as far as the story itself goes, I think it's very funny. It's, it's a pretty lighthearted episode. It's Spock, learning like the once he's fully human, he no longer has to have the nasal suppressant, and he discovers the smell of bacon for the first time and eats way too much. There's like a bit where he's hanging out at like the bar with a bunch of friends, and somebody tells a joke, and he gets the joke and starts really laughing to the point where everyone else is a little uncomfortable with it. But it's one of those things where it's like, he's going through a second puberty, I guess. Yeah, not a third puberty, a second puberty. But I also, that's one other thing, I guess, back to the physiology, is when they say that, well, you're dealing with human emotions and not Vulcan emotions, so you're basically going through a puberty. And I'm just like, but he would have already gone through a half-human puberty, So, yeah, that one doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, the episode has to do with they're trying to find a way to put Spock back together, fix him, but they're in the Vulcan system, and he has been putting off an engagement dinner with T'Pring's parents for quite a while, and the excuses for avoiding it are kind of run dry when they're on half-duty shifts and they're in the system. And like they don't want to tell anyone that he's like fully human, especially because T'Pring's mom hates humans, and like is basically looking for any reason to like call off the engagement. And so when Spock's mom comes aboard and immediately can tell that Spock's human, she's like, okay, well, Spock, I always raised you as a Vulcan, but now that you're human, I gotta raise you as a human, and I gotta teach you how to lie. So like they go through and prepare like all of the different things that the ceremonial engagement dinner entails for Vulcan society, and it's like a very strict, regimented thing where Spock has to like pour tea from a boiling metal pot with no handles. For a Vulcan, that doesn't even hurt to pick it up, but for a human, he picks it up and, it's really hot. And so he has to basically figure out how to hold it, pour the tea slowly, and then put it back on the burner without anybody seeing the pain in his face. He has to... There's one moment... There's actually one of the things is that he's supposed to share a memory of his mother through mind melding, but he can't mind meld, and they try to do a fake mind meld, like a practice run, and like everyone can tell that it's not gonna work. And so basically they're like, okay, well, that's gonna be like one of the last moments of the ceremony, so long as we can get the cure before then, we'll just try and wing it through. And they give Spock fake ears to put on, because he's just got his normal human ears now, or not normal human ears, he's got human ears, doesn't have his normal Vulcan ears, so they have to put fake ones on. And I think originally he was going to tell T'Pring as soon as she came aboard, but then when he hears her talking about the how her mom is looking for any excuse to call off the engagement, and that both of them are going to be mind melding with their mothers to share a memory as part of the ceremony. They don't explicitly say it, but that's the line, and that's when Spock decides not to tell T'Pring that he's human at the moment. But he ends up going through everything and pulling it off. And Chapel is able to go back into that transit thing and talk to the aliens there who put Spock together wrong, and she has to convince them that they did it wrong, and they're like a very like bureaucratic thing. They're like, oh well, your complaint is outside the period, so no remediation will be happening or anything like that. And she eventually convinces them to do it by expressing her feelings for Spock, and because they're like, oh, friends are not enough for us to seek remediation outside the complaint period. And so she has to kind of say, it was like, well, he's more than a friend to me, and the way you put him back has changed him, and he has lost things about him that I like, and so you need to fix it. And so they tell her how to fix it eventually, and she goes and gets Spock done right before the mind melds, and so he's able to do that. But then at the end, once everything is satisfactory, T'Pring's mother kind of gives Spock a compliment, but it's a very backhanded compliment in that she's just like, I didn't think you would be able to do it, but you did well despite your handicap. And he's like, my handicap of being half human, you mean? She's like, yes, of course. And he's like, so full human would be completely incapable of doing this? And she's like, yes, of course. He's like, well, then it would probably surprise you to learn that I've been human this whole time. And T'Pring's mom is awful. So like, you know, I figured that's how that plot was gonna go from the beginning. But T'Pring's husband, or sorry, not T'Pring's husband, T'Pring's father, T'Pring's mother's husband, he's kind of a funny character because he's like kind of a henpecked spouse where he shows up and he actually really likes the hors d'oeuvres that Pike has prepared for the dinner, but then like his wife is just like, oh, this isn't prepared in the traditional Vulcan way, and he's just like, oh no, of course my dear, you are correct, I see it now. But he just kind of wants to have snacks and be a nice guy and dealing with an awful wife, you know. It kind of makes me think of, there was a TNG episode when Deanna Troi was she was supposed to get married. It was an arranged marriage, and so like her fiance's family comes aboard, and I think it's the first episode where we meet her mom, Lwaxana Troi, and so you've got like kind of the familial bickering there. There's a lot of funny stuff in this episode, but ultimately Spock's decision to not tell T'Pring that the accident had turned him human, that pisses her off, and she's like, I thought we could trust each other with everything, but you couldn't trust me with this. So I think we need to take a break. So, yeah. I think that's probably the beginning of the end of the relationship. Obviously, it doesn't formally end until Amok time, which is in TOS. So we'll see that happen there. But they're definitely doing more of the Kirk T'Pring Chapel love triangle. And we'll see how that plays out. Now, I know a lot of people are... Actually, something that I noticed that people were saying was, we don't actually know how this love triangle could end up, because we do know that Spock doesn't end up with T'Pring, but we don't necessarily know that he doesn't end up with Chapel. Obviously, in the original series, Chapel is like a unrequited love for Spock, but she was such kind of a paper-thin character in that show that they can just do anything they want with her here. And also, like, I have to point out that in TNG, Picard mentions how he attended the wedding of Sarek's son, and unless Spock has another secret sibling that we don't know about, I assume that means that Picard was at Spock's wedding, and we don't know who Spock married. And sure, like, Picard was there, so, you know, it's in the future, but, like, humans live, I don't know, like 150 years in Star Trek time, so Spock could totally easily marry Chapel in like 100 years. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's a fun kind of, you know, lighthearted episode that kind of advances the whole will they won't they with Spock and Chapel. Highly recommend it, as I always do with this show. I think everybody should be watching it. And I think that's about it for all of the review section of the stream. But you know what? I was gonna play some video games here, but I'm actually kind of feeling at the end of my energy level today. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and call it here. But thank you all for hanging out. Dizzy, thank you for coming in and chat. Y'all have a wonderful day. By the way, I will be doing a stream on Sunday at 4 p.m. PST. Star Panda is going to be doing a panel talking about Nimona, and I'm going to be on that one. I have not seen Nimona yet. I'm going to watch it tomorrow in preparation, but yeah, look forward to that one. All right. You guys have a wonderful evening. Bye.